right. Sorry, I was just talking to Chase, my co-host, and his machine crashed. So we'll get going. He will join us here in a moment. I appreciate everybody joining us for this masterclass. The topic today is invoice workflows. We'll be going over ways to improve it, hopefully in your firm, and I'm expecting you to definitely pick up some tips and tricks that can make this process a lot easier for your firm. As always, feel free to jump in with any questions in the chat, or in the best way is using the question button in our in Zoom, and we normally try to make this fairly dynamic and answer questions in real time. Of course, if we don't get to your question, we'll certainly get back to you after the meeting. Let me start by just sort of let me share my screen first of all. Okay, I guess here's Chase. Chase, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, there we go.
I forgot to introduce myself in this chaos. I am Fred Willerup, CTO at LeanLaw, and Chase.
What do I do here? I'm the camera guy. So my job here at LeanLaw is the current position is the customer success manager. So all of your support and success needs is what I'm in charge of.
Right. All right. I'm going to start before we get into demos and so on. I'm going to start by drawing a picture of what we'll be talking about today. Last masterclass, I drew a killer picture, and it was very popular, I hope. We're talking invoice workflow, and the first part of that is all about invoice preparation. So I'm going to put in a box here about preparing invoices. And what's in this box that we'll cover is anything related to drafts, reviews, and all the internal workflows around preparing invoices. And this can be a reasonably automated process. It can also be very manual. It involves primarily two individuals in the firm: the attorney and what we call the operator. This could be your billing person or your office administrator, and these two individuals in your firm all work on preparing the invoices for the month. And what we're going to cover is ways to make this as painless as possible, basically saving time and reducing errors. So that's what we will be discussing here. The output of this is a bunch of invoices.
Ideally,
yes. So we end up with a bunch of invoices that we want to send to the client. So I'm going to draw another box here about our second big topic, and that's deliver invoices. Now here, the challenges are also related to making this as less time consuming as possible and automating as much as possible. Here we'll be discussing, stuff like adding trust statements to invoices. This says trust down here. But in the end, it's all about delivering it to clients, hopefully electronically with an email. But many of you still deal with clients that need this printed. So we'll be talking about ways to manage this in bulk form, where you can quite easily have a bunch of invoices that go to clients that need them emailed, and another bunch of invoices handled separately to clients that need them printed. There's a third sort of corner case here where we have some clients that need these as leads files.
Oh, yes.
Some of you deal with this and some of you don't. But in the end, this is all about optimizing that process of getting the invoice delivered. Now,
Fred, is the printer the thing that my parents used to have up on the top shelf of the desk that made weird noises when I turned on the internet? Right.
Yeah, you're not familiar with this thing, but you're too young for that. There's another topic hiding in here that we're going to call out separately, which is how do we make the invoices look good? Whoops, wrong button. Or what we call invoice presentation. So this is a third topic, essentially, covering, how do we make the client happy when they see the invoice? So we'll be covering that. The final topic, which we'll cover, is that there's a final step when you after you send the invoices that you want to receive payment for it, and so this is the final step in the process, getting money here. We will focus more on the two first topics here. So that's going to be our focus, but we're gonna have some time to kind of cover the final two as well. So these two green boxes are what we'll be focusing on, and hopefully you'll come out of this with some ideas of how you can make this faster every month. If it's a monthly process, if it takes 4 hours today to do, hopefully after this it'll take you 2, or that's our hope at least.
That would be
did
ideal.
I miss anything here, Chase?
No, that it all looks good.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to hand it over to you next to kind of dive into the prepare box here. What do we do in LeanLaw to prepare invoices? Do you want to take it from here, Chase?
Yes, that's a great question, Fred. What exactly would you say that we do here at LeanLaw in terms of invoice creation? All right, should be able to see my screen now. Yes. So perfect. Kind of a before step to the number one on Fred's list is actually just creating those invoices. And I'm going to go over, we'll loosely follow the tabs up top there, the ready to build, drafts approved, and then QuickBooks. But we'll take some breaks along the way and jump into different parts of the product that are relevant. So the whole idea, the whole approach that I had here was let's envision what what the ideal workflow looks like for a firm. And this is going to be different for every firm. Like Fred said, some firms print, some firms do invoices or do emails, some do leads. But it even goes down to, we'll get into like the user permissions that firms have, the organizational structure. So just keep that in mind as we go through this, that the particulars that we're addressing or suggesting here may need a little bit of tweaking based on how your firm operates. So this is like a general guideline or a template for how we envision these tools best being used. So, and if you have any questions or any specifics, absolutely feel free to ask them in the questions, the Q&A section, or the chat. We'll be taking those questions and comments along the way and doing our best to work those into the presentation. So, all right, first off is the ready to build page, everyone's favorite starting point here for creating invoices. There's a couple of quick optimizations here that we can make for creating these invoices every month or twice a month, whatever the interval is for your firm. First of all, we'll want to make sure that we are actually looking at a list of items here that are ready to build. There we go. So again, going back to that ideal firm layout, what I see a lot of success in firms, I see a lot of firms succeeding in actually using the show matters involving and the responsible filters here. So for example, I'm the firm manager and I want to create invoices for all of the attorneys in my firm. The way that I do that is by setting the show matters involving option, picking the correct attorney. In this case, we're going to pick Frederick Taylor. There we go. And I'm going to check responsible so that it's only creating invoices where Frederick is the responsible attorney. He's going to be the one that's going to be making the changes, the requests, hounding his paralegals about getting their time in, the person who's ultimately going to be getting paid for the work that's done on this. So I'll go through each of those attorneys that need to be invoiced. We'll do Frederick first, create draft invoices. We'll select all first. There we go. LeanLaw is going to crank through all of those. And then what we would do is we would go attorney by attorney and pump those out. So instead of having to do you could do all of them at once, right? But then there's not a great process behind what you're doing for each of those. If you go attorney by attorney, that leads into the process that we'll see in drafts approved and ultimately once we get it out to QuickBooks. So, and do make sure that if your firm is doing a lot of pro bono or cases with non-billables or exclusively non-billables, to check the include non-billable option down here at the bottom. LeanLaw is automatically not including your entirely non-billable and contingency matters so that those don't accidentally get invoiced at the incorrect time. Would not want to send that contingency invoice off prematurely. The client would not be excited to see that. Fred, any other optimizations or improvements we've got here on the Ready to Bill page for what makes an effective or efficient firm?
No, I think in general, I think most of the time firm operators or office managers will do this step. Although we do have some firms where it's the attorney's responsibility to create their own invoices every month. This seems to be probably best done by an office administrator that decides the right time to do this and then just bulk creates them for the firm.
Yes. Yeah, having that one point of contact or the one, I would say the one failure point, but that's not very appropriate here. Having the one person who knows what's going on definitely leads to more efficiency, so long as they actually know what they're doing. So once we've created our invoices, we then move on to the draft step. And there's a lot going on here on the draft page. Now, I expect what most of you end up doing on the draft pages is actually the pre-billing process, whether you're printing pre-bills, whether you're emailing attorneys to have them come in and check on the draft invoices, making sure that people have their time and their expenses entered. This is where a lot of the firm's billing time is actually spent. And so we want to make this as efficient and painless as possible, right? The quicker we can get this done, the quicker we can get paid. And as Fred's absolutely fantastic illustration at the beginning pointed out, this is the number one box, right? The inputs here are the attorney and the firm manager roles. And it's important that you actually set the user permissions for those roles. Kind of getting ahead of myself here. Basically, what we see is that you have the one person in the firm, usually the firm manager, billing manager, in some cases a bookkeeper, is generating these invoices, right? So that's the first part. And the second part is the attorneys. The attorneys would need to have the necessary permissions to come in and make the changes. So make the changes that would normally be done in pre-billing. Fred, I feel like I'm jumping around here. I feel like I skipped over something.
No, it's fine. I think the main point here is that in some of you print out these invoices,
right?
And you can do that. You check all of them there for a given attorney, everything somebody's responsible for. Scroll down to the bottom and then do print. This is not a good way to do it. So,
right.
But maybe it works in your firm. Like what we recommend here is that attorneys should use electronic review for their invoices. So if you cancel out of this, The key thing there is that if they're an attorney or principal in the firm and they go to drafts, they will automatically see just the invoices they're responsible for. So they can go in here, they can click on an invoice, make sure it's okay, maybe make some changes, and then move them to approved. I think that's the main point we want to get across here is that even though the firm administrator could do this step, we recommend that it's the attorney doing it.
Right. Exactly.
And we have lots of even larger firms that do it successfully that way. The attorney taking ownership.
That printing and then editing, pulling out the red pen, marking through all of these, delivering the printed pre-bills to each of the attorneys or their users, that takes up a lot of time. Not just the act of actually, walking to the printer and then dropping it off at the attorney's desk, or heaven forbid, mailing it to them. You save all that time by just putting out a notice saying, all right, everyone, the drafts are made, the drafts are ready. Everyone, all of the attorneys or whoever is responsible, please go through and check and make those changes on those draft invoices. So you're saving a ton of time and frustration by bringing that process into LeanLaw, which is why we set it up this way.
Then, we'll get back to the editing of the drafts and what you can do there. But, if we continue down the workflow, the attorney here would probably click on each of these and then approve them one at a time, which moves them over to the approved bucket. And that can also be done in bulk, but typically that attorney would just open them one at a time and approve them. Now, so maybe you don't have the approve option here, but we'll get back to that here shortly. I think maybe we'll complete the workflow here and just mention what happens when they're all in approve. What then, Chase?
Excellent segue. So in the example here, we've got Frederick, who's gone through and made the necessary adjustments. He has approved the ones that he sees fit. And now it's back to the firm manager to go through the invoices included in the approved step. So these are all of the invoices the attorneys have said, all right, we've made our changes, we've marked them up, we've written them down, we've moved things around. Now they're approved and ready to go. So this is the final step for the firm manager to come in and say, this looks good, this doesn't look good, send it back to draft, right? We're able to do that to make changes before ultimately sending them off to QuickBooks. So instead of collecting all of the pre-bills back and then going into LeanLaw and then making the changes and then submitting them, you've cut that process in half. That's now done in the same step that the attorney is making their changes. And so what lands on your virtual desk is a stack of invoices to click, 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 submit to QuickBooks, you're done. Right, click top of the list, submit to QuickBooks, done.
So I think in summary here, the successful workflow here is try and avoid printing for reviewing purposes internally. The firm operator prepares all the drafts. The attorney reviews them and approves them, and then the firm operator sends them to QuickBooks. That's a great workflow. Chase, do you want to talk about real quick, like, what if I don't have this approved step, or there's some settings here that maybe we should cover real quick to enable some of this?
Sure. So different firms usually of different sizes are going to want different workflows or billing workflows based around how the firm creates, edits, and then ultimately sends their invoices out. We've been working off the assumption that the firm has a firm manager or billing manager that is handling each of these steps. And then you've got the attorneys making their changes. Well, what if it's if it's a much smaller firm where things just need to go directly to QuickBooks, or a much larger firm where there's dedicated staff to review and go over in excruciating detail all of the invoices before they go out, which is why we have the billing workflow settings over in LeanLaw. So if we go to our settings up top and then to billing workflow on the left here, lo and behold, there are extra options here. We've got direct draft step, draft and approve, which we've been looking at, and then draft, review, and approve steps. And you'll notice as I mouse over these, the little illustration on the right here changes to give you a visual representation of what that workflow actually looks like. So like I said, and there's the little descriptions there to help out, but direct is typically for smaller firms, onesie twosies that make the invoice as part of their invoice production. They're reviewing it anyways, so there's no need for a draft. Submit to QuickBooks. Draft steps, normally you're 2 to 5, maybe 2 to 10, where the person creating it is also the person reviewing it, but they need that interim step. Say they're invoicing in bulk and don't want to review each of them one by one when they create them. Draft and approve, we just went over. And then adding in that review step there is another level of the draft or reviewing process, which we can talk about a little bit later if people are interested, but basically it's another step for reviewing and editing purposes. So, and these are really here to tailor LeanLaw to the way that the firm functions, right? If the firm operates one way, we want to make sure that we provide the most efficient way or a more efficient way to improve the billing process there.
All right, Chase, I think we should move on to the next box. Well, actually, before we do that, did we want to go over a few of the draft invoice editing options? So
yes,
there's some detail here and some enhancements we've done recently that we want to share.
Some new stuff, which I think we might have shown off a couple of months ago, but it is now in the product and has been live for quite a while now, actually. Take a look at one of these, pop open a draft invoice here, and we have some new buttons up top here. We've got make non-billable, write down to 0, save for later, and change matter. All 4 of which have been very highly requested for quite some time. So let's go through what each of those buttons does. Unless you have something selected, clicking them doesn't do anything. But as soon as we select some time entries here, those light up. So each of these are pretty straightforward, but we'll go through them anyways, and I'll give some examples or context here. So first one is make non-billable. So that's to take your time entries from being billable to non-billable. Write down to 0 is Fred, I'm pretty sure we've talked about adjustments in the past, but just as kind of a quick refresher, write downs are similar to making non-billable, except that you use write down to 0 in situations you want to track the time that was actually spent working on it, even though it wasn't billed, right? So you want to say this first time entry here, this half an hour, we're going to write it down to 0. So we're not going to build a client for it, but we still need to know that FRT needs to be paid or put in half an hour of billable time on this. So that's the difference between writing down to 0 and making non-billable. Save to later, definitely a favorite of mine. No description there, just a quick one. That takes it off the draft invoice and moves it back to ready to bill. So if you are reviewing an invoice and realize like, wait, I'm not ready to bill this time yet, whether because it needs to have changes made or because it's for time outside of the scope of the billing period for the invoice, you're able to save that later. And instead of opening up a time entry, clicking remove, picking one of these options, you're now able to do that in bulk without having to click each and every single time. So, and then change matter, drum roll please, allows us to change where the time entries are associated. So if I realize like, oh shoot, this 0.1 hours here that we're billing actually is for an entirely different client or a different matter, I think it is just matter. If I needed to change the matter that this entry is associated with, click that, change matter, and I can now change the client and matter, there you go, that these time entries are associated with. And I know for the folks in the call here that spend a lot of their time in the billing and the draft invoices, reviewing, revising, the individuals that are reviewing all of the invoices, this is massive to be able to do this in bulk instead of one at a time.
One detail, maybe just mention the 3 dots on each of the line items, what they do.
Yeah, so if we look at the triple dots here at the end of the row, look at that, it's the same options. So instead of having to do a checkbox for a one or two time entries, you've got those same options here with the triple dots on the right-hand side. They do the exact same thing, but it's the one at a time versus the bulk option for those. So how about that?
Great. Feel free to pop in with questions about any of this you're looking at that we should dive into in more detail. We sort of rely on your active participation here to guide us. So, but we don't really have any questions about this or comments. So I think we can move on.
So either everyone is a pro or.
Well, we did have a question now about Todd asked if we can explain the write-down. Yes, so when somebody does a time entry, say 4 hours, or let's just take one of these, 1.7 at the top here, it'll turn up as 1.7 hours worked, and we will bill it as 1.7 hours, which is how it will appear in reports. So if you go to, there's several of our reports that reflect these numbers, specifically our timekeeper productivity reports that we can look at here shortly. What the write-down does, you can do two things here. You can edit, if the number here 1.7 is wrong, you can just edit it and edit it to 1, but now you lose the 1.7. The 1.7 might be what this individual worked, but we don't feel good about billing that out completely. So we write it down by 0.7 or something. That difference there is the write down, the difference between what we worked and what we billed. And if you save this, and then let's head over to the productivity report in the report section. It's there. You can see here that we actually there's no write downs this month here, but you can get a sense of how much write down each individual does. It might be important for productivity and compensation and so on.
Yep, there's your write down right there.
Right.
And actually, if we dive into a specific user, we can get more granular on what was done there. And I think it's just that we don't have anything actually listed. We don't have any data for March that has that. There we go.
And I mean, we're going to move off of this topic now because it's a bigger conversation. So, yes. But thanks for the question. But just to complete this, if you go to settings, you might not see this write down option. In settings under reports, you need this checkbox at the top set for all this to be wired up. If this is not checked, things are a lot simpler when you edit. There's no write down option and so on. But if you want to enable this kind of stuff, check this box.
Cool.
All right. We have a question about you want to be able to prove time entries in the same order you entered it, and it sounds like the ordering of time entries is problematic. That some firms do review their time entries on the time entries page as opposed to on the draft. So every month you can use the time entries page over there. Chase, if you click on that real quick. And then, pick your time entries and review them there. It sounds to me like this question that these are ordered differently than they used to be. Is that what I'm hearing? Please let us know more detail and we'll get back to you separately. That was from Kim.
To kind of cap that one off, excuse me, Kim, I would just copy that question and paste it into the support chat and ask there. They'll be able to help you get that answered and figured out. Sorry.
Perfect. We have another question about writing down invoice, complete invoices. Once they're in QuickBooks, how do you write off the invoice? This is a bigger topic. Actually, we want to build this into LeanLaw. We don't yet have a function there, but it's a completely separate process from what we just discussed.
Right.
So let's see if we might have time to cover that, but I think we need to move on.
In short,
I'm going to make sure we get back to Riley about this particular question if we don't have time to cover it.
Yeah, in short, it's handled in QuickBooks. LeanLaw doesn't currently handle it, but I know we have a bunch of accounting pros in the chat. They might be able to chime in and answer specifically. Normally when someone asks that, I'll just send the QuickBooks recommended way of handling that bad debt, but understandable confusion about write-off and write-downs between LeanLaw and QuickBooks.
Yeah. All right, Chase, I think we should move to our second bucket, the delivering of the invoice. We've done enough preparation. I think we now have a bunch of invoices in QuickBooks, and they're just sitting there. What do we do?
Well, I guess we could send them to clients. If we wanted to get paid, we could probably do that. So like Fred's picture showed at the top of the call, excuse me, normally 3 different delivery options. You've got your printing, classic, your email, the new up-and-comer, and then leads invoicing. For those of you familiar, leads as you export the invoice to a text file and upload to a billing system. It's like a nice mix between printing and emailing. But all of those are handled on the QuickBooks tab of billing and LeanLaw. Now, similar to lots of other places in LeanLaw, we can just do this in bulk. Select the checkbox, click deliver, boom, done. But I want to get a little bit more focused on how we cater to different workflows or different sets of delivery needs, because a firm is going to have clients that need it printed, clients that need it emailed off, clients that need it delivered via leads. And we want to make sure that we're able to set that up and do that correctly. And part of the way that we can do that is by setting the delivery preference on a per client basis or per matter basis. And to do that, let's open up one of our matters here. That's an internal matter. There we go. If we go to the QuickBooks tab of a matter, we can actually set the invoice delivery preference like that. We've got 3 options here: default, which actually pulls the default preference from QuickBooks, email, and print. So this is one of the areas where LeanLaw is looking to QuickBooks to tell us how we want these delivered. Now, by default, everything's going to fall under default. But if you know, hey, this client prefers to have things printed and normally we email, you can pop in here, change the delivery preference. And now when you're doing your invoicing when you're doing your invoicing at the end of the month, you don't have to worry about remembering to print Jim Bob's invoice out and emailing it, or printing it to him, or emailing, printing, geez, licking a stamp and putting it in the mail. LeanLaw will automatically print out that big list of invoices that need to be mailed. Unfortunately, it doesn't lick the stamps for you, but that way, instead of having to scramble every month to figure that out, it already is recorded here for you. So that when you go to the QuickBooks tab of billing and you click the magical delivery button, LeanLaw already knows what the preference is for that matter. So how about that, Fred?
Well, I would be a little more prescriptive here. So in here, so we have a bunch of, typically, hopefully your firm will just email everything. But if you have some clients that need printed invoices, the way you would do it in here is you would go through the preparation, like Chase mentioned, to mark all the clients correctly with a delivery method. And then every month, you would go in here and you pick the delivery filter at the top. So there you can say that there are 2 key options in here: the ready to email and ready to print. So if you pick the ready to email, you will see all the invoices that are supposed to be emailed but haven't been emailed yet. And you check all of the invoices up there and email them in one click. Go down below there and say deliver, and pick email. Maybe not do that here. I don't know where they will go.
Someone's going to receive a lot of invoices.
Right. So that's the trick, getting clients and matters set up with the right preference, and then using this filter. Now, when you're ready to print all of the ones that need to be printed, pick the ready to print option here. You see all the invoices, apparently none. I guess we don't have any of those guys.
Nobody here wants it printed.
Fortunately. But let's say we had some, you would pick them, and then you pick the deliver. If you click the deliver option there, you have a couple of options here. You can get a PDF with all those invoices in, and that you can send to a printer or whatever. You can download them individually as PDF files in a big zip file. So those are kind of the two options. There's a third option just to print them over there on the right. But these are better options where you get all the invoices in one big bundle, and you can then take them from there. So pay attention to those filters up there if you want to. If you feel like you're doing a lot of clicking and of individual invoices to kind of try and figure out if they needed to be emailed or printed, you can use that filter up there.
In the same vein, the leads option works for that as well. So if we needed to look at just invoices that had leads, so we know, hey, this is the list that we need to print off or to download, you would select with leads, click the checkbox at the top, and then select the leads or combined leads.
Right. So so for leads file, maybe we'll spend just one more moment here. If you select a bunch of invoices for different clients, like you just did here, where all of them have leads enabled, the two leads options under deliver, if you go back to those options down there, the leads, the first one, will download a zip file with all the individual leads files in. So you get like one big happy zip file with a bunch of hopefully happy leads files that are named, so you can see which clients they belong to. Then from there, you can then upload them to the client's lead system.
Yep.
The combined leads option is a little odd maybe, but what that does is you would only use that for invoices for the same client. Maybe you have 3 invoices for that client for different matters. What combined leads does is it combines those into one big leads file. So it only is used for the same leads recipient. Yep. So I just wanted to add a little extra there. We have lots of questions piling up here. So let's take, there's one from Luann asking if a payment link can be included in the bulk emailing method. Great question. If you use QuickBooks payments, if you have that enabled, there will be a payment link in the email from QuickBooks.
Yep.
So you can set this up so that that's all part of it. The email method we use here, when you select email, we really just tell QuickBooks to email the invoice. So that'll all work fine. Now we are actually, it's an interesting question because we're actually going to be working on a better way. We're working on kind of taking over the email from Intuit so we can make that email to your clients much better. It's not a great email at the moment with just a big payment link and a link to the PDF of the invoice. We're actually working right now on how to improve that email. We're also working with our partner Gravity that some of you use for trust requests and using getting trust funds electronically. We're working with them on getting a Gravity payment link included in the email. So there's actually going to be a lot of stuff going on here in the next few months related to payments and emails. So stay tuned. Did we have other questions you wanna answer there, Chase? Or?
Yep. So we've got one here from Joseph. How do you send past due invoices that also include current charges without QuickBooks?
That's a tricky question. That's a great question, but a tricky one to answer. Like there's different scenarios. You know, if you have account statements enabled in QuickBooks on invoices, the previous, the past due invoices and account balance will be included on the new invoice for that month that you send to the client. So that's one part of the answer. But if you don't have a new invoice for that client in a particular month, you're gonna have to go back and resend the original invoice or create a statement, and that would the statement can't be generated from LeanLaw. You have to go to QuickBooks for that. But the way I hear the question is, I think you want to look at the account statement and enable that on your QuickBooks invoices.
And I'm going to interject something too. This is all assuming you're using QuickBooks Online. If you're not using QuickBooks Online, none of what we've talked about that happens in the QuickBooks tab here will work. This is all contingent on using QuickBooks Online. So if you're not using QuickBooks Online, that's an entirely separate conversation.
Right. We have another question. What if you have it set to print for one client, and you want to change it to email going forward? This is perfectly fine, and you can do this at any point. Go in and change a client to use email instead of print, and it'll pick it up next time. You can also, even if an invoice or a client is set to email or to print, you can still do the opposite. You can still, even though the client is set to be printed, you can still email them. Like you can still sort of break out of the workflow, but it's hopefully that's clear.
And to answer the second part of that question, using the triple dots, the three dots on the right-hand side and selecting email doesn't change the delivery preference. That's essentially the same thing as just clicking the delivery and then email option at the bottom. That's just the same thing, but for one line instead of multiple.
Do you want to pop over to QuickBooks briefly and just show where you set the default of the delivery method, since we're having so much fun with this particular question?
That's because an interesting way to put
it's not obvious where you do this, I think.
Yes, let me do that. That'll take me a second to get logged into QuickBooks, but if you've got,
well, maybe we'll skip that then. I think the only thing missing here, Chase, or the next topic here, as we're moving into the last 15 minutes, is that we wanted to touch on some topics around invoice presentation.
Yes.
This won't be, as I said in the beginning, this is not really we're not going to spend a lot of time here, but let's just go over a couple of key things.
Yeah. So what I felt was most important from the invoice presentation side, and for reference, we're in settings and then invoice presentation over here in LeanLaw, is actually down at the very bottom, the invoice dates option, which allows you to, it dictates the date that's put on the invoice, not the due date, the actual date of the invoice. So the two options are last day of the billing period and when invoice was created. A lot of firms will create their invoices for last month, or they'll create them a day or two after the month is finished. And if you want the invoices to show the last day of the month, the last day of the billing period, you would select last day of billing period. So even if it's the middle of April and I'm creating my invoices for March, if I have last day of billing period set, assuming I'm using the time period of last month or March, it will date all of those invoices as March 31st of this year. If I was to use the when invoice was created option on the right, instead of picking the last day of the period, the time period I have, it sets the date of the invoice to the day it's created. So in the example, if I was making invoices today, it would be April 27th instead of March 31st. Now, if you're a full month behind on invoicing, that's another topic for another time.
It's on you. No.
Yeah, I can't suggest improvements on that. But I know some firms don't actually know this is here. By default, it is set to last day of billing period, since that's what we heard was most common. But if you do prefer to have those invoice dates kind of off the cuff, know that that other option is there.
Well, we should highlight here that it affects two. Maybe you're thinking, who cares? It affects two things. It affects when invoices are due. So, if you have net 30 set or net 15 or whatever, the invoice date determines when that starts, when the clock starts ticking for the due date. So that's important. If you don't create the invoices until the 10th and you set the invoice date to the last day of the billing period, that's the client. It's kind of unfair to the client that they have to pay them that the clock has already started ticking.
So instead of net 30, it's now net 20 effectively.
Right, exactly.
Surprise.
So that's one parameter. The other one is for reporting. All our billed reports, any report that shows how much you billed, will use the invoice date to pinpoint, to sort of put the amount of that invoice into the right bucket. So if you use last day of billing period, the billed amount in the reports will belong to March for a March invoice. But if you use when invoice was created and you created the invoice the 2nd of April for all the March stuff, your billed amount will appear in April. So it's the due date for the client, and the reporting are two parameters that you should consider when using this option. Anything else here we want to cover, Chase? Or there's a lot here. I think we just want to, like, how do I make the invoices look good? Is that, which buttons do I check?
Most of the making the invoices pretty, adding your logo, colors and such are actually done in QuickBooks, but we've got a quick link to it in the invoice presentation section of settings. If you click the QuickBooks custom form styles, that takes you off to where most of the beautification happens. The rest of the settings here in LeanLaw are law-specific tweaks that we got feedback on from our users that they weren't seeing in QuickBooks and wanted us to be able to add in or augment. So things like adding subheaders to different sections, separating your services, your fixed fees, your expenses, or even things like adding leads codes in the description of invoices. So there's no suggested template here. It's really based on what the firm finds to be most appropriate.
Yeah, I suggest if you haven't done, you really only need to do this once or tweak a little bit along the way. So play around here, ask our support for help if you need it. One thing to be aware of, when you tweak these, they will only affect invoices that are sent to QuickBooks. So if you want to test it out, what you need to do, you can see a little preview over there, but if you want to see it for real invoices, you make some tweaks and then send an invoice from draft to QuickBooks, look at it over there, and then you can bring it back to draft, tweak some more, and then send it back to QuickBooks. So you have to kind of go back and forth like that to really see what it looks like. There's a really great question here from Doreen. How does the system know your billing period? This is actually a very good question. It knows it. It's sort of, we've tried to figure it out by using the date filter. It's the date filter on the ready to bill page. So it's quite critical actually that when you invoice, you use, for example, if we're in April here, let's pretend we're a little earlier in April. You want to use you don't want to do all time here. You want to do March and earlier. that will invoice everything up to the 31st of March. And the 31st of March here is now the end of the billing period for that invoice. So this little filter up here actually does a little more than just filtering down. It determines your billing period. So great question. Let's see.
The one from Anna, that's a fun one.
All right. It's so Anna has a question about when a payment is received. Okay. Is this this is a little complex? I'm not quite sure in real time I can figure out what the.
It's like a word problem. Like, how many watermelons do you have if one man has a cart traveling at 8 miles an hour in one direction? And to cut the joke short, Anna, it's dependent on QuickBooks. QuickBooks is the one that picks that. The payment date is, I think, to kind of extrapolate here, the revenue reports care about the date the payment was received. It doesn't care about when the invoice was dated or when it was actually billed. That's a separate column. So if you're looking real quick at the reports section and you're looking at what billed collected, that collected column, or anywhere you're seeing collected or revenue, that's based on the date of the payment. It doesn't care about the date of the invoice. That's billed in different parts of the calculation. If you're asking something different though, start a conversation in the support chat after this and I can answer any specifics because we're running a little low on time here. Looks like Fred's popped off. We've got a teammate in the office today who's probably come by and saying hello.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
Okay, I think, let's see, do we have other questions or are we wrapping up here?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go through some of the new stuff that's coming over the horizon.
Yeah, before we run out of time here, I think we need to shift focus here. Let's see here. I wanted to cover a couple of things here at the end. Let's see. There's my fine drawing we can refer back to. Oh, boy.
Get that out and frame it.
So just a couple of things that we've been working on I wanted to go over. One thing, under clients and matters, here you see all these nice lists of all your clients and so on. We've had a fair amount of performance issues for those of you that have lots of clients and matters, like thousands of them that are active here across your firm. We've optimized these pages should now be a lot faster. We're also working on the expense page. This is very close to releasing, but if you have a lot of expenses, this page has had some performance issues, and we're fixing that. So look forward to hopefully some more zippiness in the product. So that, and there's still some performance improvements coming. So I wanted to let you know that we're listening there, and that it's going to take a little time to address all of the issues, but I'm determined that you know we're going to address the performance issues we've been seeing with some of you. That's one area. There's a small but important change we made here recently that I wanted to share, and that is over under trust. We now have a trust payment vendor option hiding in here. When you pay invoices from trust, we create two transactions in QuickBooks. We create a payment for the invoice, and then we create a check which represents you taking money out of the trust account and giving it to your firm to pay yourself. Now that check needs your firm set as a vendor on it to be sort of correct accounting wise. And And you set that here. We also actually automatically create it for you if it's not set, and just set it to your firm name. In my case, Fred Law, my side business here.
Very profitable.
So just wanted to highlight this. This is sort of a detail, but it's pretty important. If you do trust accounting, which most of you do, please go in and verify that this is correct, and pick your firm in here so that these transactions are correct. That was the next thing I was going to share. Now, the final thing that I was going to share is that we are preparing I mentioned this last time, but we're getting close. We are redoing our distribution page that some of you use to help pay your attorneys based on collections and so on. A big topic that we've covered a couple of times in the past. We are expanding the ability to assign payments to distributions and report on it. We're expanding that with the ability to take a distribution and then drill into it and then send the data to QuickBooks to allow payments to the attorney. So we're going to create bills in QuickBooks for the attorneys that we we owe money to and that we want to compensate. And so this is a fairly major workflow upgrade to compensation tracking and reporting and workflows. And some of you have expressed interest in working with us on a beta version of this, and we'll be reaching out. It's very close to ready to go here. So quick time check. I think we're getting
just
close.
About there.
So I think I'm just going to mention the final thing we're working on that's coming in the next month or two, which is custom fields. So we currently have fairly limited, we have some but limited ability to create custom fields in the product. You can create a couple of text fields and some checkboxes and things, but it's not something that it's something we're expanding. We're expanding the ability to add more custom fields. And then currently you can assign custom fields to invoices using the QuickBooks custom field mechanism. We're also going to allow you to add those custom fields to the memo area in QuickBooks, which gets around certain limitations that QuickBooks has. So short version is we're going to put some effort into more custom fields capability, and we're pretty excited about it. So if you are also excited about it, reach out and we can work with you to make it awesomer, as always. All right, I think that's all I had. I got some yay here from Linda. That's great. That means a lot. Yeah, we can talk more about this
or yay.
Person, if you'd like.
Even more yay than before.
All right, I think we're ready to go. Chase, what's the topic next month?
Topic for next month is expenses. Yep.
We're going to talk expenses. I think last time we talked about this was a year and a half ago. And it's another important workflow where we have some automation features and things that can make it quicker for you to get reimbursed for expenses in this case. And so we're going to be sharing that. I think that's it.
That's just about it. Thank you everyone for tagging along.
Appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye.
See you next month.